Back here on Open, Daren Jaime here with you, where we continue to bring you the news, the information, and the people, and the things that are actually making a difference. When we talk about navigating COVID-19, one of the big challenges is in regards to New York City's homeless. The homeless population continues to grow. Many are infected and many affected. And so, New York State Assembly Speaker and also Assembly member of the 83rd Assembly District, Carl Heastie, has put forward a plan to actually deal with the homelessness issue, particularly prior to COVID-19. But now we want to find out exactly how it's working amidst COVID-19. So we're pleased to be joined by the Assembly Speaker for New York State, Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie, also the Assembly member of the 83rd District right here in the borough of the Bronx. And Assemblyman Heastie, Speaker, good to have you.
How are you, Darren? Thanks for having me. So, we had a bold vision that's been going on for years, and it's really been championed by Assemblyman Andy Heastie, who is our social service chair. He represents the great borough of Queens. And we always felt that, the homeless issue is, as I'd say, well-intentioned as it's been, over the years. It's just the outcomes just don't seem to match that same sense of caring. So we came up with a bold idea that if you did more to help people from being homeless, it would be a less costly endeavor instead of trying to help people once they become homeless. And so that was a bold plan that we were going to put forward in our one house resolution and hopefully try to negotiate it with the governor and the Senate. But then the world changed, I'd say, on around, I'd say March, probably 3rd or 4th, when you had the first cluster developing in Westchester. And it kind of just changed the whole narrative. At first, people thought it was just going to be, a flu on steroids, but we're finding that this virus every day is affecting new and different things and places and people that we had no idea that it would affect. So in some regard, we've had to put the plan on hold because it did require, funding investment. And right now, the state is facing a serious $13 to $15 billion deficit. The governor's arrested about $5 billion of that, so it's still about $8 billion short. But so we need, considerable help from the federal government. And I'd say a lot of what we'd like to do, members have put in a lot of COVID-related bills that require some financial assistance and some that are non-financial. And, we're looking at those bills, but, we're really waiting to see what the federal government is going to be able to do, for hard-hit states. No state has been hit harder than New York. And I'm not just saying we should get New York favoritism. I mean, I feel like, we are the greatest state in the union, but, but no state has gone through what we've gone through. The health disparities, the fact that New York City is the most densely populated city in the nation. All of these things fed into the high COVID numbers. So unfortunately, we had to put the plan on hold for now.
Yeah. And talk to us a little bit more about, you talk about the Bronx, you talk about New York City and New York State. And when we talk about issues, food is a big issue.
Right.
Hunger is a big issue. And I know you guys have been partnering with Fresh Direct, directing free food to those in need through the Operation 5 Borough Food Drive initiative. Give us a little bit about that and how that's been actually able to help your district as well as, Bronxites.
I think during this time, people who are still, have their jobs, they can survive this a little better, or they're doing a little better than those who are still waiting for their unemployment benefits, or seniors who, we don't want them going out as much. So we've tried to take a mix in all of that, trying to help the areas in my community that I think that have been most affected. The buildings that we have a large senior population. Again, those who we think that are still waiting for unemployment, the people on the lower income scale. We've been trying to concentrate on getting food, masks, and hand sanitizer to those we feel are the most vulnerable and most in need.
Yeah, yeah. When we talk about those who are most in need, obviously New York City, New York State seems to be and is the epicenter for this coronavirus. A lot of funds being distributed by way of coronavirus. You guys recently passed the budget. Talk to us a little bit about that. How hard was it, given the fact that we've got all these needs here, and it's a very tight budget. I know you had some great work in that too.
Well, for us in the assembly, we prioritize wanting to have a families first agenda, particularly trying to put resources into areas that help benefit families. This COVID crisis kind of changed um, like I said, it just seemed from the second or third, the second week in March, it's like it was a totally different ball game because we saw that it was going to affect the economy and some of the funds that we thought that would be available. Absent tax increases, we had to make adjustments, on the budget. But we always try to keep our priorities strong. We wanted to make sure that um, in terms of trying to battle, this virus. It wasn't the budget that the assembly majority would like to have seen, but it was one we had to deal with at during this time.
Yeah, yeah. When we talk about money, I mean, obviously, we want to ask you about, go back to food for a second. Talk to me a little about the food pantries and how much actually has the state actually allocated towards, the procurement for these food pantries.
I think there was initially, and don't hold me to this number, but I think initially in the budget we had about $60 million statewide for food pantries, and then during the budget, I think we negotiated another 25 million. And I'd say the city would probably see 40% of that money if I had to give like a rough average. So the city of New York would probably see, I'd say in aggregate, probably hopefully through all that, we'll probably see about $40 million to
Mm-hmm.
help the food
Yeah,
pantries, the food banks, because the food pantries are the ones in the local communities. So we're trying to get the local food pantries connected with the citywide food banks, so that there could be resources for people in need in communities across the city
yeah.
and the state, of course.
Yeah. A little later on in the show, we're going to be talking about small business. And we know that when it comes to small business here, the funds that were supposed to be making its way towards New York, 70% goes to New York City. Um, the Bronx left out. Your thoughts on that, and how do we correct this here?
Well, I think again, I think the federal government is well intentioned in trying to make sure that you can get money to those businesses. I remember a conversation I had with Senator Schumer at the beginning of this pandemic. I said, the federal government is really going to have to subsidize people's lives, I'd say, for the next, few months, a year, until, something turns the corner in terms of this COVID, virus, whether we get a vaccine, whether we get a real treatment. Um, it's up to the federal government, and he agreed. But the problem is, you have, for the big, major companies, they have entire accounting firms that have the ability to put together these applications. They usually work with the big, with the big banks. Um, but I think there needed to be a little more of a community and minority-owned business focus, and they tried to do that in the second. What was that? The third stimulus bill, where they tried to put a set aside in, but clearly, as we can all see, more work still needs to be done in terms of helping out the mom and pop shops, particularly those that are minority owned.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I want to ask you one final question about the census. I mean, there's a lot of
Mhm.
concern about the census. When we look at COVID-19, we know that it disproportionately affects communities of color. When we talk about the census, we know that communities of color are sometimes underrepresented in terms of numbers. Any concern on your part with regards to, the census, given the fact that we've got this going on right now, the reporting of numbers and what that could mean economically for the state?
Right. You know, if as you've heard the governor say that New York is a donor state, which means we give more money to the federal government than we get back. Um, and for every person that fills out the census, it's more federal dollars that gets directed back. So that's why it's important for people to respond to the census. I think New York only had about 67% 10 years ago. So that means only two out of every three people in the state, responded. Well, there was respondents per household in terms of um, responding to the census. So we want to build on that. It hurts representation. It hurts direct funding because remember, congressional seats are drawn based on state's population. So if New York is behind the eight ball in comparison with other states in the nation that do a better job, there's projections are saying that we could lose two members of Congress. Um, but I would say if the state had a robust census, maybe we can move it down to just one congressional seat that has to be that we would lose.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got to leave it there. It's great having you on and sharing with us here on
Always.
Open. And, we've been doing this for years. You've got an open door here. Come on back anytime. New York
Anytime.
State Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie. Thanks much.
All right. Stay safe until all your viewers and everyone watching. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Socially distance. Wear those masks out in public. Take nothing for granted. We should all become, I'd say, uh, probably the cleanest and most hygienic that we've ever been in our lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaker Heastie, good to have you.
All right. Take care.
All righty. Take care.
Okay.
Now, we got more open. We want you to stay with us. We're coming right back right after this.